All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ryan Susky. I'm Director of Programs at the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, and I'll be serving as your facilitator today for the Unit 4 hearing of the National Invitational. In a moment, I'm going to have the judges go ahead and introduce themselves, followed by the students, and then we will begin the hearing. Students are going to deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge questions. Now, during the hearing, my microphone will be muted, and I'll be holding up the 1 minute and time signs. For that reason, I highly recommend that you set your computer to gallery view instead of speaker view. That way you can see my time cards and your fellow students. At the conclusion of the hearing, the judges will give brief feedback to the teams, and then we will conclude. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to your chairperson for the Unit 4 hearings for Gahanna Middle School.
Hi, welcome Gahanna Middle School to the National Invitational, and congratulations. My name is Diana Owen. I'm a professor of political science at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and now I'll let my other judges introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deshawn Whitaker. I'm a We the People teacher in Charles County Public Schools in Maryland.
And my name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the political science department at Clemson University in South Carolina. It's great to see everybody. I've been judging for a number of years and always look forward to having these conversations. Relax. We're going to have fun learning from you about what you've learned about the Constitution.
And if now each of you could introduce yourselves and your teacher.
Go first. My name is Dalen Givens. I am in 8th grade, and our teacher, Mike Browning.
Hi, my name is Ishan Rajagoliker, and I go to Middle School South.
Hi, my name is Madison Hall, and I go to Gahanna Middle School South, and my teacher is Mike Browning.
Great, thank you very much. So the question that you have for today is question number 1, and I'll read that now. An American historian claims that the ratification debates were, quote, one of the greatest and most probing public debates in American history, unquote. Do you agree or disagree? Why? What evidence can you offer to support your response? Evaluate the major arguments the Federalists advanced in support of the ratification of the Constitution. Evaluate the major arguments the Anti-Federalists put forth in opposition to ratification of the Constitution. Why did a Bill of Rights become a focal point for both the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist? Please begin.
We agree with the statement the ratification debates were one of the greatest and most probing debates in American history. The Federalists and Anti-Federalists were able to come to a compromise about the Constitution rather than going back and forth with their disagreements about how the opposing sides' ideas were incorrect. As the argument went on, the two sides were able to come to an agreement that was fair for both sides, which gave the Federalist a Constitution and the Anti-Federalist a Bill of Rights. The way the debates were held back then compared to now show how much our nation has changed. During the ratification of the Constitution, the Federalists proposed many arguments in favor of the ratification of the Constitution. One major argument that was put forth by the Federalists was the need for a stronger national government after the Articles of Confederation lacked sufficient authority at the national level. The new Constitution would split the government into 3 equal branches and could not be dominated by one group or individual because of checks and balances, which was a system that would be put in place with the goal that no branch of the government had more power than the others. The Federalists also put forth the argument that there is not a need for a Bill of Rights to be in the Constitution. The new Constitution already guaranteed the protected rights of the people, so they felt it would be unnecessary and impossible to include all these rights. A final argument that was put forth by the Federalists was that the new federal courts were a necessary thing. These courts would help to provide checks and balances on the branches of the government, as well as guarantee the citizens their liberty and rights. Not all the arguments went the way the Federalists had hoped, but in the end, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists were able to come to an agreement that was fair for both parties.
The Anti-Federalist arguments were brought to the Constitutional Convention in retaliation against the Federalists. The Anti-Federalist goal was not to discard the thoughts and opinions of the Federalists. They were opposed to the Constitution for very good reasoning that led to our Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists argued that the Constitution would give too much power to the federal government. They worried that the government would not have the ability to openly represent the average citizen. They stated the nation was far too large for the government to respond to the needs and concerns of the citizens on a state and local basis. The Anti-Federalists believed in small, localized governments. This was because of their past experiences with England and the large, powerful government with control over the people. The original Constitution did not have a Bill of Rights, which the Anti-Federalists feared, because in order for them to be in favor of the Constitution in even the slightest way, they needed a Bill of Rights. The main rights they were concerned about were freedom of speech and trial by jury. This led to negotiations between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists on the Constitution. The Constitution was ratified in 1788, yet the Bill of Rights was not added until 1791. In the end, the Anti-Federalists did get what they fought for.
With this, the Bill of Rights became a focal point for both the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The Bill of Rights was a key to compromise between these two groups of people. The Anti-Federalists wanted to have a Bill of Rights so that their basic liberties would have guaranteed protection. The Federalists agreed to add a Bill of Rights as long as the Anti-Federalists voted for the Constitution. The original unamended Constitution was a remarkable achievement, establishing a revolutionary structure of government that put power in the hands of the people. The Bill of Rights built on that foundation, protecting our most cherished American freedoms. As we have exercised, restricted, expanded, tested, and debated those freedoms, the Bill of Rights has shaped and has been shaped by what it means to be American. If the Federalists and Anti-Federalists did not come to a conclusion to these arguments, there might not have been an organized U.S. government today that we have. In the end, these debates set the structure of the United States and taught us compromise is the cement of our democracy.
Thanks very much. Just going to ask a basic question. Do you agree with the Federalist or the Anti-Federalist about the need for a Bill of Rights?
I agree with the Anti-Federalists because the Bill of Rights gives the people or lists the basic rights of the people, which is important. Even though the Federalists felt it was unnecessary, I think it was necessary for our government today.
To go along with my colleague, I feel like both the Federalists and Anti-Federalists had a good argument for both of their sides. The Federalists wanted to make sure that there would be a constitution for a structure of the United States, but the Anti-Federalists felt that without a Bill of Rights, our basic liberties would be unprotected. So I believe in the end that both political parties were right in their own way.
I like to understand, so the Federalist side, the reason that they thought that the Constitution, they did not need a Bill of Rights was because of the,
I think what my colleague is trying to say is the Federalists thought that a Bill of Rights wouldn't necessarily be needed, but the Anti-Federalists, on the other hand, thought that in order for our basic liberties to be protected, that we needed a Bill of Rights. But I do believe in the end, both sides were correct. And without this compromise, I do believe that we would maybe not have an organized U.S. government as we do today.
All right, thank you. Were there other areas of concern from the Anti-Federalists besides the Bill of Rights? And if so, what were they?
I think that the other areas of concern were just the basic structure of our country and how the courts could potentially become corrupt. This is because if the federal courts have as much power as they do, they could take control and override the elected officials of the citizens and the elected laws. And this could lead to the government having too much power over the citizens.
What about the executive branch? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I also think the Anti-Federalists didn't want the Constitution, but since they compromised with the Federalists, they were able to get the Federalists were able to get the Constitution, and they were able to get their Bill of Rights.
What about the executive branch of government? The Anti-Federalists were afraid of too much executive power. The Federalists called for an energetic executive. Did you talked in your presentation about no branch should be more powerful than the other? kind of, do you think the executive was a major problem in reaching this document? I mean, is the presidency too strong, not strong enough? Which side was right, the Federalist or the Anti-Federalist?
I believe in this case, oh, sorry.
You can go.
Okay, I would like to believe that the Federalist side was more correct, because the anti-Federalists were mainly concerned about the executive branch having too much power. Mainly, like I spoke inside of my presentation about the past experiences with England and how the executive branch had way too much control over the people. And I feel like though the anti-Federalists feared this, the new Constitution would not allow for this to happen. And I feel like the Federalists were right in that situation.
I also think the Federalists were correct, because after the Articles of Confederation had lacked sufficient authority at the national level, they knew that the national government had to be stronger, but they brought checks and balances to make sure that each branch of the government was controlled and not one was too powerful, which is important.
With this, I respectfully do kind of disagree with my colleagues. I believe that the Anti-Federalists did have a right to fear that the executive branch was more powerful than all of the other branches because of the past that happened with the British. And I believe that they had a right to be fearful of the executive branch taking over their basic liberties and making sure, and I do believe that they definitely had a right and say of making sure that their basic liberties were protected.
So you talk about the formation of the judicial branch in your presentation. Can you talk a little bit about how the founders viewed the role of the judicial branch in the government?
I feel like that the Federalists saw that the judicial branch was made to guarantee the rights of the citizens. And this was because, so the argument that they had was, we do not need a Bill of Rights. And that was because of the federal courts that would take control and make sure that no one's rights were violated. But in the Anti-Federalist case, they did not believe that those courts would be strong enough and be able to guarantee the rights, because they believed that a small, like just the average citizen, like anybody else, they would not be able to respond to their concerns. Yet the Federalists believed that they could, and the Anti-Federalists did not trust it because of their experience with England, and they were concerned and did not want to take another chance.
These courts would also help to keep checks and balances in place, which was an important thing in the Constitution that the Federalists proposed. So no branch of the government had more power than the others. And it would also guarantee the citizens their liberties and rights, which had also with the Bill of Rights.
All right. Could you elaborate on how the courts provide checks and balances?
The courts can provide checks and balances in the sense that the rights of the Constitution is protecting all rights, the rights of the citizens. So the federal courts could come in if a citizen's rights were being violated, and they could go through and make a decision whether their rights are being violated or not.
Okay, a lot of times the violation of rights comes from state government officials. Do you think that would be something that the Anti-Federalists would have anticipated? Would they have thought that was a problem? How should protections be provided?
I I do believe the Anti-Federalists were a little weary of these state.
Go ahead and finish that sentence.
Oh, okay. I do believe the Anti-Federalists were a little weary of this statement because, along with their past, once again, I feel like some courts do have different intentions than others, and I feel like there may be more of a power difference in each of the courts.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much for your presentation and for the Q&A. And now the judges will give you some feedback. And I'll start first. I really liked your opening statement. I like the fact that you start out with the notion of compromise, and then you went out to discuss what were the areas of contention between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and ultimately how the compromise, particularly over the Bill of Rights, resulted in the ratification of the constitutions. I thought you did a good job of stating the Federalist position and the Anti-Federalist position. And, you know, I like the fact that at some point in your conversation, you said that the Constitution itself kind of defines in a way what it means to be an American. And I thought that was a really interesting and compelling statement. I thought that you did a good job of answering the questions, kind of brought up some of the key concepts, you know, checks and balances, protecting rights and liberties, and those kinds of things. And you did a nice job of discussing, you know, kind of what the court was all about. I also thought that as a team, you worked well together. You know, when Dalen kind of at the one point there just lost his concentration, which of course happens all the time, you know, Madison jumped in and, you know, kind of finished that. And then you came back, Dalen, and answered other questions with just, you know, extreme confidence. That is really, really strong. And it just shows, you know, how each individual on the team worked, but, you know, kind of knew their stuff, and then how you worked well together as a team. So great job.
Thank you.
And yes, I agree with everything my colleague said. You did very well at presenting the positions of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and making that point that compromise was needed in order for the Constitution to be ratified. I appreciated your conversation about the Bill of Rights, and the discussion about the judiciary, and how the judiciary could protect the rights of citizens. Great to hear from you today, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. And I will go back to even earlier where you took a clear position on the basic question asked. Do you agree or disagree with the statement? You took the clear position to begin with. I'm sure that seems quite natural to you, but sometimes we are still wondering what position teams have taken. But in your case, there was no doubt. I would like to have had some more time to talk about things like that they're looking for fairness on both sides, because compromising for what purpose is an important question. But yeah, you did a very good job, particularly focusing on the Bill of Rights. And so you've represented your school and state very well. And thanks for all your hard work on this.
And thanks to your teacher, Mr. Browning, for preparing this team and bringing you to the National Invitational. Congratulations.
Yeah.